Good morning, y'all. A little mic trouble there. I had my adapter that goes into my laptop plugged into the wrong port. Good grief. Good morning, y'all. It is Tuesday, y'all. That's how I used to do these devotions. I'll be like, it's Tuesday, y'all. It's Monday, y'all. It's Tuesday, y'all. It's Thursday, blah, and so on and so forth. But it is Tuesday. Made it through Monday. Hope you did as well. And got a busy week. Lots of things going on. Prayer for one another. And encourage and edify one another. And as much as all possible, go share the gospel with somebody. The good news. The gospel, the grace of God. Because we do not know when the rapture will happen. There are some folks out there among the Bible believing crowd that believe the rapture will happen in the fall, which is heading towards now, August, September. And they do that because this is actually the time where Christ was born, between August, the end of August, 1st of September time frame. Somewhere in there is when he was born. He was born during the Feast of Tabernacles. And then he was crucified during the Passover, which is in the springtime, sometime in March, April, depending on the calendar. So some folks believe because it's the Feast of Tabernacles, he'll come down and rapture us. Others believe it's the springtime because that's when he was crucified, he was buried, and he rose from the dead. I believe it's going to be the springtime, the catching up. I don't believe it is the fall, but I could be wrong. I'm just me. It makes more sense that the rapture would be in the springtime. Probably within 40 days after Passover, sometime between that. Is when the rapture is going to happen. But that's neither here nor there. But it is going into fall, y'all. August is almost halfway through. It'll be halfway through here in a couple days. Just going by so fast. So yesterday we wrapped up Acts chapter 11, and we reviewed how the disciples were first called Christians at Antioch. Then we looked at how Antioch became a missionary hub, and the church at Antioch was financially helping those that are being persecuted in the church at Jerusalem. Now this is important because Paul and Barnabas had went to Antioch, but Peter and James and the other apostles stayed in Jerusalem and Judea. They didn't travel out. And in fact, there's not much known about Peter's actual travels other than we do know that he went to Babylon at some point because he brings that up in one of his epistles. But there's no biblical evidence whatsoever that Peter ever went to Rome. He stayed mostly there in Israel. What's Israel? Judea. So, but Paul and Barnabas, Paul, the apostle now to the Gentiles, as we're going to continue to see here, we saw that by Peter's mouth, the door was open to the Gentiles because he did hold the keys. However, it's by Paul that Christ chooses to be the main vessel, the main apostle. And Paul went all around that region, so much that he ended up in Rome, and that's where Paul was beheaded. He was martyred. So there at the end of Acts chapter 11, we saw that the church in Judah, the church in Jerusalem, needed financial help for their persecutions. So God put it upon the heart of the church at Antioch to go support them. That's missionary outreach, folks. So that's what Paul and Barnabas, look there in verse 11:30, which also they did and sent it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Saul. Back up to verse 29. So we put this in context. Then the disciples, every man according to his ability, determined to send relief unto the brethren which dwelt in Judea, which also they did and sent it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Saul. Now we're going to start chapter 12 today. Chapter 12 is about 25 verses, but we're going to focus on James, which is John the apostle's brother, James the apostle and John the apostle, and then we're going to see what happened with Peter. Look at verse 1 here. Now about the time that time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, He's going after the leadership of the church. He's going to persecute him. Smite the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. The shepherd is the one that gathers all the flock together and keeps them close knit. So there's some shepherds, under shepherds of Christ at Jerusalem, Judea. James was the head. And then you had Peter. Peter was right there with him. Now about that time, Herod the king stretched forth his hand to vex certain of the church, and he killed James the brother of John with the sword. Here's something to note. Every single one of the apostles were killed, except for John, who died of as an old man. But they did try to kill him. But every single one of them were killed, except for John. Again, they did try to kill him. They boiled him in a vat of oil. And then couldn't kill him then, so they banished him to the island of Patmos. And that's where history says that he finally died as an old man. Why do I stress this? There are some that call themselves apostles today. Apostles were handpicked by Christ for their position, all the way to Paul. Paul was handpicked by Christ. But the thing about all the apostles is Paul said they were appointed unto death, which means they were going to die for the cause of Christ. And they did. Every single one of them were killed. Every single one of them were persecuted, and every single one of them were killed. By the end of Paul's ministry, really, there's only 3 apostles that we know are still around. Doesn't talk about any others, and that's Peter, Paul, and John the Apostle. Those are the only 3 mentioned towards the end of Paul's ministry. What happened to the rest of them? Well, they were martyred. They were killed off. They were killed off for what they were doing. So this is a warning to you guys out there that claim to be apostles. Or if you follow somebody, whether on YouTube or Facebook or your church organization, that they have somebody there that claims to be an apostle. One thing, they're handpicked by Christ, and you have to ask them, when did you have that divine experience where Christ came down and handpicked you? Christ came down and met with you one-on-one. Ask him that. And then ask them, well, the apostles were all in poverty. They didn't have much. Most of them didn't really even have a house. They were just traveling around. Ask them that. When they're driving their big fancy $100,000, $200,000 cars and living in $500,000 to $3, $4, $5 million, $10 million homes. These guys that claim to be apostles. They're not apostles. What are they? They're fakes. They're fakers. They're not real. This is a little side nugget here. I'm on this rabbit trail simply because what happened here with the apostle James. Now later on, James the Lord's brother took over the church and became the head of the church of Jerusalem. But right now, this is James the apostle. That's who it's talking about. And James the apostle was killed. He was martyred. He was just taken out. Why? Because Herod got a hair. Wild Herod's like, I'm going to go after him. The elders and the Pharisees and Sadducees were sending out people like Saul to go out and persecute and to lead to prison, which led to death many times. But now Herod himself gets involved. And because in verse 3, and because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. There then were the days of unleavened bread. This is going to be springtime, around Passover. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to the 4 quaternions, whatever I don't know how to pronounce it, of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Now I want you to notice here, and this is where we're going to stop today. When we look at this passage about Easter, the King James Bible is the only Bible that maintains the word Easter. Easter was not Passover. Did it happen during that time? Yes. Easter was a spring celebration of fertility, of fruit bearing. Easter was from Eoster. Eoster is from Ashtaroth, the goddess of fertility. Herod was not a devout Jew. Herod was a pagan Jew that celebrated worldly celebrations. And this Easter portion here, and this is where we're going to end it, this Easter portion had nothing to do with Passover. And all these Bibles that go and correct this and make it Passover are twisting scriptures to make an excuse. Easter and Passover are completely different and they have nothing to do with each other except for the timing. As a Bible believer, this is something I know. And as you develop to become a Bible believer, and there's a lot of you that are watching these videos that are Bible believers, I am a King James Bible believing Christian. I only use the King James Bible because of all the words that are changed in the modern Bibles. And here's a big one. They change it to Easter. Change Easter to Passover just because it's during the same time period. That doesn't mean it's right. You have to go to the root. Easter, Eoster, Ashtaroth. All the way back, Ashtaroth goes all the way back to Nimrod and his mother, Semiramis, who was also his wife, by the way. There's a whole nother rabbit trail, a whole nother ball game. But that's all I got for you today. We're going to stop right there, trying to keep these shorter now. I hope you have a good day. We'll pick back up tomorrow, verse 5. God bless y'all.